For years, the death of Elvis Presley has been surrounded by questions, speculation, and public fascination. Official reports explained the cause, investigations were conducted, conclusions were reached, and yet something never fully settled. Because behind those official records, there were personal accounts, notes, observations, and testimonies from the people who were closest to him in his final years. Among them, one figure stood out, a doctor who had seen Elvis not as a legend, but as a patient. One of the most discussed figures in Elvis Presley's medical history is George C. Nichopoulos, often referred to as Dr. Nick. He was Elvis's personal physician during the later years of his life. Unlike public records which summarize facts, a physician's perspective offers something different, a continuous view of a patient's condition over time. Through medical notes, prescriptions, and later testimonies, a clearer picture began to emerge, not of a sudden tragedy, but of a gradual decline. According to documented accounts, Elvis Presley was dealing with multiple health issues in the years leading up to his death. These included high blood pressure, digestive problems, and chronic fatigue. To manage these conditions, he was prescribed medications, many of them intended to help him sleep, manage pain, or maintain energy. Individually, these prescriptions had medical justification, but over time the number of medications increased, and with that, the complexity of managing them also grew. Medical records and later investigations revealed that Elvis had access to multiple prescriptions, sometimes from more than one source. This created a situation where different medications were being used simultaneously. At the time, this type of medical practice was not as strictly regulated as it is today. However, from a modern perspective, it raises important questions, because the issue was not just what he was taking, but how everything interacted inside his body. The idea of secret notes comes not from hidden documents in the traditional sense, but from details that were not widely understood by the public at the time. Doctors, including those involved in his care, had a deeper awareness of his condition than fans ever did. They saw the patterns, the symptoms, the changes. But much of this remained within medical circles, at least initially, and that gap between public perception and private reality is where the real story begins. As medical reviews continued after the death of Elvis Presley, toxicology findings became a central focus of attention. Reports confirmed the presence of multiple prescription drugs in his system at the time of his death. This was not a single substance situation. Instead, it involved a combination of medications, each prescribed for different purposes. From a medical standpoint, this raised serious concerns, not necessarily about intent, but about accumulation. Because when multiple substances interact, their combined effect can be far more significant than each individually. The role of George C. Nichopoulos came under increasing scrutiny. As Elvis's primary physician, he had been responsible for prescribing many of the medications found in his system. Following Elvis's death, questions were raised about how these prescriptions were managed. Were they properly monitored? Were the risks fully understood? Could the outcome have been prevented? These questions did not have simple answers, but they marked the beginning of a deeper investigation into medical responsibility. In the years that followed, Dr. Nichopoulos faced formal inquiries regarding his treatment of Elvis Presley. Medical boards reviewed his prescribing practices, examining whether they met acceptable standards. The case became one of the most widely discussed exercises of prescription oversight in high-profile patients. While he defended his actions, stating that he was trying to help Elvis manage real medical conditions, the situation remained controversial.
It highlighted the difficulty of balancing treatment, patient demands, and medical judgment, especially under pressure. What made this case particularly complex was the absence of a single clear cause. Elvis Presley did not die from one specific event that could be easily isolated. Instead, his death was linked to a combination of factors: underlying health conditions, long-term physical strain, and the cumulative effects of medications. From a medical perspective, this is known as a multifactorial outcome, and it often makes conclusions harder to define, but no less important to understand. As more information became public, the idea of secret notes began to take on a different meaning. It wasn't about hidden documents or conspiracies. It was about the difference between what was known privately by medical professionals and what was understood publicly at the time. Doctors had observed the warning signs, the fatigue, the sleep issues, the dependency on medication. But those observations were not fully visible to the outside world, and by the time the full picture became clear, it was already too late. In the years following his death, the medical story behind Elvis Presley continued to unfold through reports, testimonies, and official reviews. What once seemed like a sudden tragedy began to reveal itself as something far more gradual. Doctors, investigators, and experts revisited the case, trying to understand not just what happened, but how it happened. The focus was no longer on a single moment. It was on a pattern, a series of decisions, treatments, and conditions that built over time. The controversy surrounding George C. Nichopoulos became part of a broader discussion about medical ethics. His role in prescribing medications to Elvis was examined repeatedly. Some believed he had done what he thought was best under difficult circumstances. Others argued that the volume and combination of prescriptions were excessive. This debate extended beyond one doctor. It raised questions about how far responsibility goes when treating high-profile patients. Over time, Elvis Presley's case influenced how people viewed prescription practices. It became a reference point in discussions about over-medication and patient monitoring. While medicine has evolved since then, the lessons remain relevant. The importance of coordination between doctors, awareness of drug interactions, and long-term patient care became more emphasized. In that sense, his story had an impact beyond music. It reached into the medical field itself. But beyond the reports, the debates, and the medical discussions, there is still a human story at the center of it all. Elvis Presley was not just a patient or a case study. He was a person, living under constant pressure, managing expectations, and dealing with real physical challenges. The notes, the prescriptions, the records, they tell part of the story, but they don't fully capture what it felt like to live that life. So when people talk about the doctor's secret notes, they're not really talking about hidden papers or mysterious discoveries. They're talking about something more subtle. The difference between what was happening behind the scenes and what the world was able to see. Because sometimes the truth isn't hidden. It's just not fully understood until it's too late. Now I want to ask you, do you believe Elvis Presley's death could have been prevented with better medical control? Or do you think the pressures of his life made this outcome unavoidable? Leave your opinion in the comments. I read everything. And if you enjoy stories like this, real stories that go beyond the surface and reveal what was really happening behind the scenes, make sure to subscribe, because the next story might make you question everything you thought you knew.